everyone. You're listening to Ultra Q 1999, Turn of the Millennium. Y2K has killed Red. Their internal programming did not account for having a 2-0 in front instead of a 19. While they're being repaired by friends and family alike, it's your new host, DJ Brad, coming with at you, I meant to say, not with you. That sounds really bad. But I guess I have to live with this now. With all the latest details in the world of Ultraman Leo, I am joined by Mel.
Sigh. Sorry.
Your enthusiasm.
I was just feeling down because I was thinking about my long lost dead brother, who I've never talked about before now.
Well, let me tell you who I got in the studio.
Oh my god!
Hey, Mel's brother, I feel like you have a few really important questions that we need to answer. Like,
in fact, maybe the narrator should ask them for us.
The narrator doesn't seem too bothered, actually.
Don't worry about it. We'll figure out later.
The narrator's like, I'm sure he had his reasons for never showing up and for leaving again.
This the J.J. Abrams Ultraman series.
Honestly, a little bit. I guess before that, Red got kidnapped by friends and family for social obligations at last minute.
Seems mostly family, particularly.
Well, yeah.
At the last minute.
I feel like whenever I have to say one or the other, I just attach on the other as like an all-inclusive, like, hedging my bets thing. But yeah, I think it was just family came over and they couldn't really record without it being weird, which is,
Brad having the forehead vein pop as he has to find a way to say the word friends with benefits without causing problems.
What? Stupid.
This is a terrible energy to start, but
this is really bad.
You know what? Could not have asked for perhaps better energy going into our 99th mainline podcast episode. Ignore the fact that technically, with all our skipping the cues and stuff, we've been over 100 for a while, but don't worry about it.
Yeah. This is by far the longest podcast I've been a part of. First to reach triple digits, for sure.
Well, we still technically. We still have it. But
yeah, one of us could die in this week.
Yeah, Red and I have to go to Hokkaido next week. Who knows?
Yeah.
We could die in those...
attacked by
a bear.
Horror, or some sort of horror series that isn't all that scary.
Yeah.
Like a fish man. Yeah, what have you gotten up to? Because I don't got much, to be honest.
I got a few things. It turns out, like, 2 out of 3 of them are, like, thematically resonant with your opening bit.
Oh my fucking god. What
some of this
DJ have you subscribed to?
No. So first of all, watch the movie, courtesy of Shell by Genre bonusodes. I watched the 1995 movie Strange Days, which is like a cyberpunk movie. Apparently James Cameron wrote it. I forget the name of the director who directed it, but it's the person who directed The Hurt Locker.
Catherine Bigelow.
Yes.
With a screenplay by James Cameron and Jay Cox, who I feel like is a name I recognize. I don't fucking know. Did Gangs of New York with Scorsese.
I feel so bad for the guy named Richard Cox. Anyway. Yeah, so it seems like Bigelow was, I think, supposed to direct the New Rose Hotel movie. And then she was like, maybe instead of doing like a weird adaptation of Gibson's story, I could just like work on a movie that's like thematically inspired by the Gibson story instead. we can see what the impetus of this movie is. But yeah, it's set in like the last few days, with the climax being like the final day of 1999 before the year 2000 hits. Except with Cyberpunk, where they're like, damn, what if there was crazy technology 5 years in the future? The crazy technology is it's basically the sim stuff. Like you see a lot of Cyberpunk stuff where it's like, oh, you can put the memories in you can play back the memories and watch them and feel like you're really living them. And it's about this like really pathetic, washed up ex-detective Nero, who is all about like dealing with these. He's basically a dealer for this technology that started as like kind of like police surveillance, but then got out as like a black market thing because now people are just like, damn, I want to voyeuristically experience other people's memories. And he gets kind of caught up in like this criminal conspiracy, along with like his friend who's like the straight-laced like a bodyguard chauffeur lady, Mace, who has feelings for him but also is like no nonsense, and it's like, damn, why you suck so much? why can't you be better? And I think it does some cool stuff cinematography wise because it shows lots of movements of like, because it's like, oh, you're experiencing other people's memories, you get a lot of like first person shots of things, and that's cool. I will say it can be a bit hard to watch a bit because it's a pretty cool movie, but like also some of the subject matter it deals with, and especially with the relation to like the first person point of view stuff, can get hard because one aspect is like it seems like the one undercurrent of the movie is like it's took inspiration from the 1992 LA riots in response to like police brutality, so like police violence and militarization and like black righteous like resistance to the state is like a undercurrent that's going on in the movie. And so you get like some parts where you get first person, because of the memory thing, first person eyewitness to police brutality. It's like, oh, that's hard to watch. But even more hard to watch is like when you find out like when you get like to the actual, oh, there's a fucked up crime going on, where it's some fucked up criminal guy who's like trying to lure Nero to the conspiracy thingamajig. Sends him like starts sending him. He sends him like because the memory's on discs, so he's sending him discs. The first one he sends is like first person point of view perpetration of sexual violence / murder, and it's like this is really hard to watch. Jesus Christ. So definitely like content warnings for the movie, but I think it's pretty good, even if I guess because it is a James Cameron written thing, it does kind of like pull the punches and do like the liberal ending as the new year hits.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Which is unfortunate, but also like it is a Hollywood blockbuster movie, so what can you expect? Like it does like go further than you'd expect, but does, as you'd expect, also pull pull the punch at the end at the last minute. And it's like, well, maybe it is just the individuals and not the structural issues.
I'm surprised I've never heard of this.
I somehow haven't either.
I saw the name of this in my subscription feed for Shelved by Genre, but I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
So this is interesting.
It's funny because it came out the same year as Johnny Mnemonic. And I enjoy Johnny Mnemonic, but this is definitely a higher quality movie. But also was a bigger flop.
That makes sense.
And also for whatever reason, there's like weird rights distribution, so it might be just hard to find legally. I think they said it was like weirdly like in a similar like 2-production deal with like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie around like the previous year. Hold on, what was the movie? Oh, True Lies. Yeah, that one.
Oh, okay.
Though I haven't seen that movie. I have no idea how it probably doesn't connect any thematically. It's probably just like, oh, they just were just like a weird production connections, because sometimes that happens.
Yeah, it looks like I'm looking on because I got curious, and it looks like if you want like a physical copy of this, either you're getting like an old DVD or like I think there's a Blu-ray, but only in the UK.
Yeah, weird situation like that.
Yeah. It's on. Oh no, it is not on Prime Video. Title is unavailable due to expired rights. Yeah, this is what you gotta sail the seas for. It looks like.
Yeah. Also found out through the bonus episode. There's a line where like Mace confronts Nero about like his obsession with like, it's a thing. You play back memories, which means you're stuck in the past because he has like he can't get over his ex-girlfriend kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And replays their memories together to get off, and it's like, damn. Hologram Rose coming to you soon in Burning Chrome circa 1980 something. Yeah, she says this line. She's like, right here, right now, and apparently that line is sampled. It's used as the core sample in the Fatboy Slim song, right here, right now. And I was like, oh,
okay. I was wondering.
I didn't know that this movie was the source of that one song.
That's wild.
For whatever reason, like my mom, because of weird. I associate that song with dinosaurs.
Wait, why?
Because when I was a child, there was a thing on. I think they had like a kids show on TV that I don't know if it was a British show or made in production with like British companies, because I forget if the narrators in this that were actually like British themselves, but like they I guess had a deal where they got to use CG assets from Walking with Dinosaurs, and there was a sequence at one point where they show those assets while playing the song Right Here, Right Now, and because that was my first introduction to the song when I was 5, it is just ingrained in my mind as like that's just like a weird primordial association that like it's not like I think, oh yeah, I think of dinosaurs when the song comes all the time, but it's like just in the back of my mind, oh yeah, I think I see that spinning T-Rex CG model in my head sometimes when that song plays.
That's pretty good.
I don't know what the show was called, but it is a weird like. It is an anecdote that only I can bring. Just like my mom being into the British TV show New Tricks.
Oh, can I say it was revealed in our group chat that Mel's mother knows of the existence of Red?
Yeah,
and
I told
asked Mel.
Yeah. So I mentioned to her that I haven't given Red's name or anything, but I have mentioned, oh yeah, I have an online friend in the UK, and I've told them about your tastes in TV, and they think it's funny. And then I think at some point, just out of the blue, she texts me, "Hey, can you tell your British friend if they've heard of Inspector Lewis?" And then
I love this development. It's so wholesome.
Red apparently revealed that they had also told their mom about the existence of my mom.
It's so good.
But yeah, that was Strange Days. Pretty good movie.
May I ask how you acquired this? Because I've been looking. Oh, hey, wait, nope, hold on. I just did not look deep enough into the archive, perhaps. Oh no, this is the novelization. Never mind.
Well, when I say the high seas, I mean on the pirate ship.
Yeah.
The one in the bay, maybe.
Yeah, okay. That's the classic.
Yeah.
I'm getting text messages.
I feel like there's the one that's like a string of numbers that people maybe like more. But I don't like using that one because it's the worst search engine ever. Where it's like...
No, I feel, yeah.
You add more terms and expands the search rather than narrowing it down. so it's like impossible to find anything. It's like, oh, I searched for a movie and the movie has the title of "The" in it. Well, I guess I'm finding every movie ever made now. Thanks. But yeah. My next thing is also thematically relevant. Because I checked off another box of my backlog bingo, and hey, you know how this people are freaking out about this Nintendo Direct that just happened?
Yeah.
Can you think of maybe a time when like a different console manufacturer 20 years ago was faced with the same hubris?
Oh God, I was like, surely the PS3 is not.
Unfortunately. But
retro consoles are like the Super Nintendo, right?
But if you recall, a certain Kaz Hirai wanted to show off to the world his favorite racing game on the PSP. It's Ridge Racer.
Oh yeah, actually I did see you play this. You played Type 4, right?
Yeah, I played Type 4, R4 on the PS1. A game released in 1999 and also set in the year 1999. Have you played this one? Just like...
Yes, I actually played... This was on my bingo last year and was one of 3 games I actually played from my bingo last year. And I don't think I talked about it on the podcast just because I didn't have anything much to say other than, boy, I love that game's soundtrack and aesthetic.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this is another game on my bingo that I checked off. One of 2 after Burning Rangers. And yeah, like as Brad said, it has a cool, slick aesthetic, really cool soundtrack. The vibes are immaculate. It's really like, I like this. The presentation's like this minimalist UI. I feel like they have either like stock photos or pre-rendered backgrounds they gave like over a filter kind of thing for like because they have like because the Grand Prix, they have 4 Grand Prix, and they have like little VN segments where like you have a background, they put like a Tales of skit box for the captain of your racing team, and there's 4 teams. You have in like ascending order from easiest to hardest difficulty. You got the French team, which is a story of like which is the weakest one in my opinion, because it's a story of like, oh, this independent woman who's not gonna listen to what her dad says and marry her fiance. Instead, she's gonna force her own pass by marrying you instead after you win the Grand Prix, the jerk off motion. Then you got like the Japanese team is the middle one. The Pac-Man team, because they're all, it's a Namco games, they're all branded after classic Namco arcade games. This one's the one about like the guy who's like the captain of he's like the manager's like standoffish with you, and he's like, I don't like you, but actually I'm getting over my hang up with the fact that the last racer died, but actually you're alright, buddy. And then the next one after that's the Italian one where it's like, oh, I'm standoffish against you, but actually I'm getting over the fact my son who was a racer died.
Yeah, it happens enough.
Yeah, as we found out when he when he talked about F1.
Yeah.
And finally, maybe the funniest one for me is the American one, because you're like this nerdy glasses guy who's going like, damn, I'm just trying to be a good manager, but they won't give us money because our team sucks. And yeah, so you got those 4 Grand Prix, and it seems like your different placement in the race can get different, like, sort of quote-unquote routes. Like, the stories change a little bit. But not too much, obviously, depending on like how your placement in the race.
How they treat you is very dependent on your race performance.
Yeah.
Sometimes... Like, I distinctly remember I restarted the, what's the second team again? That's the Pac-Man team, right?
Yeah.
Is that the Japanese team?
Yes.
Yes, I restarted because also, too, how well you do early on impacts how good of a car you get for the later part of the game. And I remember I restarted because I could not do, I think it was the last race on that route with the car I had. I'm just like, this is impossible. So I replayed it to do better and get a better car. And it was just night and day of like, um, oh, you're like a replacement for the dead guy we liked, and you will never be as good as him, too. You know what? You're pretty good, too.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
The way the game works is like there's like 3 heats for the Grand Prix. There's the first heat where it's like 2 races and you have to get 3rd place at least. Second heat is 2 races and you have to get at least 2nd place. And so there's a wiggle room there for them to tell you suck. And also a wiggle room to get like what defines a car. And then the final heat's 4 races, though like there's kind of like a distinction made between the final race and the 3 main races. And now, since those ones all you must get first to pass, it's sort of like a more linear at that point. Though for context, also I'm doing this is part of like a, for the past couple months, my friend Kayam and Mug have started we're doing like an informal game club thing, to pick away at different games and just talk about them. And like, my friend kind of told me like, he restarted races to purposely try and get first place each time, and he says that like if you do like really well, and so the story changes sometimes like, oh, the mascot girl gives you like fan mail that she actually thinks your team's the coolest kind of thing. So there's a lot of like fun stuff like there. Also, unlocking cars depends on your placement in the races, if that wasn't clear, which does mean unlocking all the cars is like ridiculous. If you want to do that, if you want to get that Pac-Man car, which I will not be doing. I do feel like there is a degree which it does feel like it's like demands perfection a bit.
Oh yeah,
which can be frustrating, and also does feel like you're not necessarily racing against opponents so much as like you are driving on the road, and the 8 cars in front of you are like milestones you have to pass. And like when you get into range, the cars will react to you a bit and like make a challenge. But basically it's like, assuming you pass them and you don't fuck up too hard, you're basically just like, oh, this is like a checkpoint basically. And it's interesting. Cause it does feel like when talking about it with like the call and the game call, so like it was like we were like, this feels, I guess, more like a driving game than a racing game, to the degree that distinction matters, because it's like kind of more like an outrun kind of thing, because you're not like technically racing against the opponents. And I feel like it gets muddied a bit when you got like maybe in the higher levels, because then you'll start seeing like, oh, there's cars like within range of each other, but even then like the AI cars aren't competing against each other. They're just like, you know, you pass them, and then if you try, you know, they'll try to fuck you up a little bit while they can, and if you fuck up they'll pass you again, but you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. Drift cars are definitely better than grip cars. I could not figure out grip cars because there's 2 kind of cars. But also I was struggling a lot with like drifting still, because I feel like I kept not getting the timing entirely right, where I'd like sometimes accidentally drift when I didn't want to. And then other times, like, I am purposely trying to drift, but not doing the timing, so I just slam into the wall. And then at that point, I'm like, well, I'm just going to load a save state, because the race is lost at this difficulty level. It is pretty demanding in that respect. I am curious how it compares, like, mechanically to other Ridge Racers, like, if other Ridge Racers are like that. I know there's, like, it's like a second console game, I think. Second console exclusive game, because there was a Rage Racer, but also there's a bunch of like arcade ports, obviously. I don't know how the arcade games compare in terms of like racing versus driving or stuff like that. I think like Gran Turismo's out at this point, so like some of the stuff of like drift versus grip is like maybe like a trying to add quote unquote sim elements, along with that, you know, just like unlocking new cars and stuff like that is like more in line with that kind of sensibility, and also being a console game rather than an arcade game. I don't know necessarily how the franchise evolved in terms of like the, you know, Ridge Racer 5 and 6 or like the PSP games later. But obviously, like, also for a lot of reasons, this game is like probably like a fan favorite just in terms of style.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the reason I played this one and not any of the others. Is I was just like, this is the one, you know?
Yeah, it is the one. It is funny. It came out in the same year as Garo Mark of the Wolves, and they're both defined by aggressive yellow.
Yeah, no, this game, like, I adore the gray and white on yellow and black on yellow, like, just whole look. It's so unique feeling.
Yeah.
I adore it.
Yeah.
I feel like this game, I don't know if you've had this experience too, but I feel like this game is like something that I only ever really heard about in recent years, and I feel like has been heavily bolstered in reputation by the, like, newfound peak of PS1 nostalgia that we find ourselves in.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, because, like, as someone who has always been, you know, I grew up with PS1, this is my generation, like, I always kind of knew of this game and, like, saw it on shelves and shit, but, like, I feel like the last few years people really have come around on being like, oh, fuck, no, this is actually one of the best games on the fucking system. Which is neat.
Yeah, yeah, like, I think that's true. Like, it's definitely a game, like, I think I was vaguely aware of Ridge Racer, and at some point vaguely aware that the fourth game is called Type 4, but I think it wasn't really, like, until more recent years that, like, really turned heads in the direction of the game. Mm-hmm. I think also part of that's, like, I think, like, one of the hosts of the RPG podcast at, like, Rich Great Amnesia, one of the hosts, like, did at some point did an article about the game, because he is, like, he's a big fondness and nostalgia for the game, and he later turned that into, like, a solo podcast on their feed. And it's really just like, oh, here is me going on for, like, about, like, X amount of minutes, maybe to an hour, of, like, here's what makes this game special from both, like, aesthetic and vibe standpoint, as well as just, like, how it feels to play, the experience of playing it, and, like, both growing up with it and also returning to it, and, like, the emotional resonance, and just, you know, let me find that.
There are many songs from this game's OST on my I'm at work writing playlist.
Yeah.
Very good songs to write to.
Yeah, like,
shoutouts to Move Me and Silhouette Dance.
Move Me is a classic for sure. Slow Dance as well. I really like Moving in Circles, which is the one that for the final race on Shooting Hoops, which I analogize to Baby Park from Mario Park, because it's just, like, a simple circle where you just got to keep going for, like, 8 times.
Yep. I can't remember, because I think I only did 2 of the routes, and then I was like, I've had my fill of this game. But, you know, I replayed them till I got, like, the best placement or whatever. Are the tracks the same every mode, and just the story changes, or are they different tracks?
It's the same.
I do not recall.
It's the same.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, you know, it's cool. It's neat.
I have kept meaning to go back to the other ones, but I just haven't felt the, like, as much as I've gotten into F1 recently, I don't really view myself as, like, a racing guy, but maybe F1 is the juice I need to be like, oh, I should check out more racing games. I am curious how the other Ridge Racers play.
Yeah, me too. Oh, go
ahead.
Oh, nothing. I was just gonna say, like, I know there's, like, a PlayStation 2 game that's more story driven and also more sim-like, called, like, R Racing Evolution or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say the thing I feel like I've heard about Ridge Racer as it goes on is a lot of the personality goes away, and it just kind of becomes a diet, like I don't want to say, like, Diet Gran Turismo specifically, but it feels like they were kind of chasing after maybe the more popular mainstream racing games, and kind of lost out on what people liked about it a little bit, maybe. Yeah. I have not heard great things about that series towards the end there.
Yeah, I think I've heard people say that, like, the PS2 ones and PSP ones are pretty good, but also
well, I think there was a Vita one that was kind of just
once you get to like I guess PS3 and like Vita era, you don't get as much.
Oh, that was definitely a time for cool things to die. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, after all, Vita means life.
Yeah.
Also, I found like the review I mentioned just a bit ago. I'll put that in the description. I also like, just going back to shooting hoops, I like that like the race takes place like just before midnight, and so when you pass the finish line, it goes "Happy New Year!"
Yeah, it's so good.
I was just thinking about it because I'm also unfortunately can't talk about it today because nowhere near done. But like I'm watching like the 1999 Sentai season with a friend, and there was just like, obviously this is gonna happen, but like there is something to just like, the year is 1999 and next year is the year 2000, so our cultural products have to talk about this. Especially because like you have like the uncertainty of Y2K and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like it seeps into like the vibes and like themes of the stuff of that year in a way that was just like, I didn't really have a sense of because I was like 6. But like, it's interesting. Just like, oh, like this is like a number that we kind of like invented, but like it's a big deal, and like, well, it's gonna be a while before anyone gets to do it again, maybe ever, because even like 80 years from now, it's like not as big a deal to go from like 2099 to like 2100.
Yeah.
So it's just yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to think about. But I'll talk about that more for the respective Sentai season when I actually get that done, squared away. For now, moving away from the stuff about the year 1999, I have one more thing I finished.
Mm-hmm.
I finished another non-fiction historical book. I have finished The Counter-Revolution of 1776, Slave Resistance and the Origins of the United States of America.
Is this from that one guy who always writes books with titles that go hard?
Yes.
Whose name is eluding me?
Yeah, Gerald Horne.
Yes.
The Good Doctor. If I remember correctly, I think when I talked about the last time I brought a book by him, you went and actually got this audiobook of the book that I finished off Audible.
Oh yeah, probably.
But yeah, this book's pretty good. I'd say it's essential reading for like if you're a communist in North America. It's ignoring release order for nonfiction books because that's silly. But timeline-wise, this is like 100 years removed from the last book I talked about. I think there's like another book in between, so maybe it's like more like 200 books. There's like another book in between that I haven't got to yet, but this one's like more like about the 1700s. It's basically sort of arguing like,
this is in fact in my Audible library. I looked.
nice. It feels hard to talk concisely about this because like the book is like, I'm going to explain really well in a way that you can follow a bunch of different threads that all kind of like interweave and spiral out and also create contradictory things happening because dialectics. And it's just sort of like, it kind of starts off with like, we have like the English Civil War where you have them basically Parliament waiting over the king. And even when they get the king back, it's kind of like, well, parliamentary supremacy is still there with the Glorious Revolution. And this sort of kickstarts the end of the royal monopoly on the African slave trade into sort of like free market African slave trade, which explodes the African slave trade and has like a crazy ripple effect in that you suddenly have like a really big demographic shift in the Caribbean, which naturally leads to a lot of slave revolts. And so the British colony solution to this is maybe as a release valve, we start colonizing mainland North America more. And this means, well, we need more white settlers to dispossess indigenous land from to settle, but also the slave trade is really profitable. And with like the southern states basically being like an extension of, basically almost like a political and economic extension of the Caribbean at first. Like it even says in the book, oh, did you know that like because of just like, oh, this is where the elites transferred from, South Carolina kind of just starts as like an extension of Barbados, which is fun.
That makes sense.
I was like reading this book and I was like, well, I'm not American, but I understand completely why in the 1860s South Carolina was the first to secede with this context of just like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, there was a very brief amount of time where I had family there, so I've
only been to North Carolina because my uncle like was there for a couple of years. I kind of like, this is like a really dumb distinction, but for a reason I always think of like South Carolina as the more evil Carolina, even though I'm like,
well, 100%.
Well, they are both evil.
Yeah,
just like every other U.S. state, but you know,
there is absolutely a vibe shift though.
Yeah. And like the opening up of the African slave trade to like any merchant, obviously like demographically evil, but also like means that a lot of like the merchant class up and coming and the American mainland are getting really rich as well, and are maybe despite British economic policy less interested in maybe, you know, not trading with the French and the Spanish because profits. And so in a way you start to have like the American merchant class being almost like an internal rival to the British merchant class. And you have like also a weird contradiction of like the slave, you have more slaves coming in to the Americas because they're lucrative, but you have the same demographic problem of like, we need to overthrow, the slaves want to overthrow us and create their own independent societies that aren't ruled by us. But also we need more white settlers, which means we need to take more indigenous land. But also when we're dealing, like I talked about like last book, where it's like the solution to the problem of colonialism was that to invent whiteness instead of like Christianity. But also this book talks about, well, it's still a work in progress, the whiteness thing, because you still have like, maybe Irish and Scots aren't too pleased to just like go do the English bidding in the name of whiteness just quite yet when they have issues at home. And so you can't entirely rely upon that stuff. Or also like, there's still like Catholic versus Protestant rivalries between the powers that trickles down into the society still. And then meanwhile you have like both the French and the Spanish on both sides of the Americas, kind of like, the French in Quebec and the Spanish in Florida, basically like doing like as a threat, and also like, even though we have slaves, we are more willing to like also just arm slaves ourselves, ex-slaves, into doing like raids and like slave revolts in the American colonies, which destabilize them. And so there's this sort of like twin, like external threat from foreign European powers who again are also using slaves, but also like are I guess in terms of like their racial policies are like less black and white than the Anglo-American ones, which are like, part of the pun is just like, oh yeah, there's white people, there's black people, and this is very codified, whereas like there's more like gradients in like the Spanish, for instance, where you can have free like Africans and they can have social mobility a bit, and this gives them like, so you have like Florida as a refugee place for escaped slaves who then are willing to like, yeah, sure, I'll get an armed regiment and go fire a raid into like South Carolina because fuck those guys, kind of thing going on, while you also have like internal slave revolts going on and like slaves poisoning their masters, etc. And then on top of that, you also have like the necessity of like whiteness as an institution to keep things together, because you have like one guy being like, well, if they're sending black raids into South Carolina from Florida, what we need to do is create the solely no slavery, no black people colony of Georgia in between, and that should solve the problem. It does not solve the problem, because on one hand, slavery is still profitable, so people keep sleeping in their own slaves for economic reasons. But also, once you like remove the black racial underclass, all you get are a bunch of people who are not white, united by whiteness, but instead are like reproducing the same national ethnic conflicts and power disparities from Europe. And so it's not really sustainable. Eventually, like, well, okay, fine, Georgia just gets to have slaves again, but then it doesn't actually solve the problem. And you just get this all like this cascading spiral of things where eventually it culminates in sort of like, eventually in the 7 Years' War, the British just like take Florida and Quebec. And then it kind of becomes like, at the same time this is happening, they're being like outcompeted in the slave trade by like the French and stuff like that, or the Dutch, or like, you know, people who like still have like kind of like royal monopolies kind of thing. And you know, there's also like, as you get like a more of a black population in England itself, there's like more of a shift in attitudes of like, maybe the slavery shit is bad in like England. That's just like unfathomable in the North America. And like the idea of also like adopting as a release valve the sort of like Spanish model of like, you know, have free black, some degree of social mobility is also anathema, and like the black and white racial model of like the Anglo-American colonists. To the extent that like as Britain keeps having to fight all these wars, and also just like at the same time you have like Jamaica having constant slave revolts, ironically at the same time, you have like the British like, well, we can't get, there's like from our white population, there's not really loyal people, because we have like on one hand, Irish and Scots aren't necessarily interested in like enlisting in the British Army or Navy. And also, whenever we ask for conscription of the American colonists, they keep getting uppity and mad and deserting. And so, by necessity, we almost have to, like, resort to relying on enlisting black troops, or, like, promising freedom for, like, black slaves if they join the military. Especially because, like, this is what the French and British, or the French and Spanish are also using. And so, this creates more conflict, because the Americans are like, what do you mean now we have black redcoats? Are the British gonna sick the black people against us good white people? And as you can imagine, having more black armed troops in defense of a system that's about African slavery is not really tenable. So the situation is like, in London you have like maybe the shift towards abolition, and meanwhile, once you take out the Spanish and the French as an external threat, now there's just like the threat of like the internal enemy, quote unquote, of the African slaves rising up, and also the fact that the British aren't letting them expand further west to take indigenous lands and kill the more indigenous people, because the British is like, I don't want to start more wars. And combined with like, you know, the British like arming like African troops, and also like maybe moving towards abolition, the American colonists are like, well, clearly what we have to do to protect our white civilization is to break with the crown. And create a new society of freedom where we're free to own slaves and take indigenous land. And this hypocrisy is apparently very noticed by the British at the time. Like, people in England were like, what the fuck are you talking about? Slavery? We talk about freedom and slavery and like freedom from tyranny, but like, you guys are the slave owners. The most aggressive pro-freedom people in the US are the slave owners. And this, like, basically the crux of like the book TLDR is like, how can you call it like the actual revolution, American Revolution, if like the whole impetus is like based around, we want to take and genocide indigenous people for their land, and also continue the African slave trade. How dare you oppress us from our freedom, kind of thing. And just like it's like you can't really compare like the progressiveness of like the American Revolution when it's like premised on like uplifting specifically white people and like being fascistic to like, you know, non-white people, basically, as Irkman. And the book also kind of ends with like sort of like, oh well, the reason why whiteness eventually worked in the US is like by breaking away from like the British Crown, they could like, you know, it breaks free of like the and adopting republicanism, it kind of like breaks free from like the issues that of like trying to massage whiteness, of like, oh, whiteness but attached to like the British crown, and so you have like maybe more trepidation of like actually buying into the project when it's like, well, I am Scottish still though, kind of thing. But like when it's like, oh, it's George Washington instead of King George, it's like, well, sure, I can be white.
So it's kind of like a reset, like culturally, like blank slate of like.
Yeah, it's sort of like
we're starting fresh.
Yeah, even though it's obviously like, oh yeah, the planter elite from British, like. I guess it will eventually becomes like, I guess, like, you know, the people who've been there for a few generations anyway, but it's sort of like by like creating a new state with new institutions, it's sort of like, oh, we can like dispense with like the old world, the biases, and create some like a new identity. And so there's like in the last chapter, it's like, oh yeah, and they opened like basically like made it really easy for Europeans to come to the US and get naturalized. It's sort of like a need to like the demographics are needed in order to like have a system that like is still dependent on like more African slaves and also taking more indigenous land. And of course, you know, like once the Spanish and French have been kicked out of North America, they're like very happy to like, oh well, if this is gonna like be an L for England, of course we'll support the colonists. And yeah, it's definitely like a very compelling and well-told book. It's really going beat by beat of like, hell, here's all these dynamics are playing out. Here's why, like, for instance, why, you know, the British taking of Spanish Florida was a seminal event, like, and also just like, oh, would things have gone differently if, you know, different, like, what if questions of, for instance, like, it does raise fairly on, like, when the war is happening, just like, oh yeah, if, like, Lord Dunmore, I guess, whatever, he like raised like a significant like successful raising of 6 million large like black army for the British, and it's like, well, if they didn't all die of smallpox and they had been able to launch a strong sustained campaign in the south, the war probably would have gone a very different way for the British, because that would be kind of it for the southern states. If like there was just like a really strong, well organized and not killed off by smallpox black army like liberating slaves kind of. I don't know, it's really interesting. I think it's like definitely something you should. Obviously, I did summarize the book, but obviously, you know, I'm also like, it's an academic book, so you should give it a read through, to like sort of see like all the like actual facts and historical anecdotes laid out, because it's really compelling, and good.
Yeah, I should give this a listen at some point. I am a little sad that this guy, considering how much he has written, only seems to have 3 audiobooks of his work. The other one of the other ones being Class Struggle in Hollywood, 1930 to 1950, which definitely interests me.
Yeah, he's
someone interested in that era.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of different stuff. Like most of the stuff is like I focus on like it was like you know, this kind of themes and stuff like that, like the imperialism stuff. But there's also like stuff he did like a book on like boxing. He's done like books about like certain black radicals like W.D. Du Bois, for instance. Right now he's writing a book on British Columbia, and he's like in Vancouver or Victoria. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But yeah, he's
he could hit up Northern Lion for a stream.
that would be very funny. Seeing those two interact. But yeah, I don't know which of his books I'll read next, and I might read a different thing by a different author in between. But yeah, it's very worth a read. Obviously, a very important book, I think, for people to read, especially if they certainly live in North America. I think, because like, you know, you gotta like know the conditions of their society, in order to change it. Otherwise, you'll just get people who are like, you know, ignore the sort of like, they'll be like, oh yeah, we'll just like expand all the unions and forget that, like, you know, in the like the early 1900s, like all the unions were like banning black people, for instance. So you know, there needs to be like, you know, deeper looks at this kind of stuff. But yeah,
I will never forget. I think it was, it's been so long. It was either sophomore or junior year. My history teacher in high school saying something that I remember at the time being like, I don't think that's true. And like, I feel like has been one of those things said during your academic career that just like has haunted me throughout my life, which was my US history teacher very proudly saying, and for a document written by a bunch of old straight white guys, the the Constitution has held up as an incredibly versatile document that has I think he said like gotten many diverse like ranges of people like prosperity or something like that, and I was just like, I don't I think you're getting a little high on your own supply, buddy.
Lin-Manuel Miranda be like,
oh, that dude probably fucking loves Hamilton.
I don't think you can read this book and come away feeling any positive feelings towards Hamilton. But yeah, that's me.
I don't have too much. We're almost an hour in, honestly.
How the fuck?
But I played a bit more Tales of Phantasia. I'm officially past the halfway point. Still having a good time. There was a really obnoxious section where you have to fly in a Pegasus and do combat, but like they change how you move, and it's not great.
I kind of want to
like,
see how that feels eventually, but I imagine that it's a fucked up change.
It's not great, but it also doesn't last that long, thankfully, so it's kind of like whatever, it's over. And there's like a nice little peaceful lull that I'm in where there's just some downtime, which allows you to kind of go out into the world and do some side quests and take care of things and stuff, and that's fun. That game world is like, I don't want to say it's huge, but it's just large enough that it's kind of fun to check back in on towns and stuff you visited before and, you know, track down new stuff. I have a friend watching me play who's very familiar with the game, so he's been able to point me in the right direction if I'm, you know, missing something, which is kind of cool. But I'm mostly still just kind of like poking through and exploring on my own and just kind of doing what I can. But like if I miss like an art in a dungeon, he'll be like, oh, if you want, you can go back, like circle back around here and go to this room you missed and get stuff, which is fun. Nice. So the other thing I did is me and my friend Julian started and it's a rewatch for him, SSSS.Gridman.
Hey,
perhaps you've heard of it.
Well, me hosting this Ultraman progress. No, really. Yeah.
Which is a show that is an anime reboot / sequel thing to the old Gridman show, which I've never fucking seen. And I feel like most people watching this anime have probably not fucking seen.
Yeah, it's definitely a case of like the anime is like overtaken.
Yeah. There's definitely parts where I'm like, I feel like this is a reference to shit. I don't know how many of these monsters are just monsters from the old show, but in animated form. I was wondering that a lot, because a lot of them are drawn in a way that looks like it's riffing on like old Toku suit monsters, which is really cool. Like they move around like they're guys in suits sometimes. It's fun. It stars is his name what's his name? I'm already forgetting the protagonist. Cause he's kind of boring so far. What's his name? Hold on, I'm looking this up. No, not Great Man protagonist.
It's Yuta, Hibiki Yuta, one of those.
Yuta, yes. Yuta, and then there's Rika and Utsumi, creating this like trio of school kids. So there's Yuta is kind of like amnesiac hero boy. Utsumi, who is childhood best friend who's smart. And then Rika, who is heroine girl whose mom owns a small antique shop. And they're doing the Monster of the Week Toku thing.
Yeah.
I like it so far. I kind of have it like I do with a lot of Trigger things where I'm like, okay, I don't think this is the best thing in the world like a lot of people do. But it's
I think
fun.
some people overlook, but I also have I do think one asset it has over like the conventional Trigger stuff, at least in terms of like feeling different, it's like they actually did get like the writer of this show is Keiichi Hasegawa, who is like an Ultraman writer veteran.
Okay.
He's gonna like, we're gonna get to shows that he's the head writer for once we get to like the 90s and aughts, so you know.
I think the only thing I really have to say about the show is I feel like Akane has vindicated my desire for Ultraman to have clearer villains because she is just the best character in the show. Yeah.
Well, the thing you also keep in mind is like this is contemporaneous to like Ultraman Orb and Geed. This is like new gen Ultraman era. They're writing this show, so remains to be seen.
I don't know shit about those two.
Yeah, I do. I've seen them, but yeah, we'll There's like, you know, we'll have to see in the future, a billion years in the future.
Yeah,
that era of Ultraman.
I'm looking forward to wrapping this up. I'm hoping because it's like 12 episodes, right?
Yeah, it's like 12, maybe 13.
We're 4 in. At first blush, I'm like, there's a lot of guys, and I feel like okay. Do you remember a while back when Red talked about how New Shonen doesn't want to do like exposition or like it wants to like quote unquote get to the good stuff and just kind of gets right to the action and maybe doesn't do a lot of the setup?
I think you also talk about this with like Ultraman Ace episodes.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this show is falling into that where I wish maybe this show uses its main character with amnesia boy to just be like, oh, we're just gonna get you right into the monster stuff kinda and how weird this world is and all this wild stuff going on with like the Gridman transformation, but I honestly just kind of wish maybe we had a slower first episode that maybe made me care about these people a little bit more than I do right now. Like, the last episode was doing some relationship stuff, and I'm just like, well, I don't really feel like I know these two yet, so, like, I don't know if I really care. I don't know. The children yearn for longer than one core shows.
Yeah.
I'm child.
Yeah. Apparently, I'm a seasonal who doesn't have attention span for 50 episode stuff.
You stupid. I'm a quote retweet dunk you about how you're a stupid baby.
Yeah, how about I watch the 50 episodes of Mobile Suit Gundam to taste something interesting, I guess.
Don't go on Twitter, folks. This is bad.
Yeah.
This is rough out there.
Unfortunately, I also have to deal with annoying people on Blue Sky.
True.
Blue MAGA out there.
It's so bad.
Can't believe I had to see damn, people are so dumb for taking issue with hands off NATO. Shut the fuck up, you dipshit. Anyway.
God, this reminds me. Have you seen this image of someone saying, guys, we need communism, and then someone responding, my grandfather fought against the Soviets in World War II. No, full stop.
So sorry. Just one quick follow-up.
Woo!
It's funny that like a scandal that we had last year in Canada was that like they did a standing ovation for like the Ukrainian patriot who fought against the Soviets in World War II, and no one. They kind of just. I guess maybe they probably just didn't want people to question it, and of course people question. Like, wait a minute, now hold on.
Yeah. The world is stupid.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of stupidity, do we want to talk about Ultraman Leo this week.
Yes. Absolutely.
All right. Episode 22 of Ultraman Leo. The Leo brothers versus the Monster Brothers. Let me do a quick booklet check. Yep, okay, that's the same title. I think actually we're in alignment now on book title versus red description title. Featuring Leo's little brother Astra, big brother Kaiju Gallon, and little brother Kaiju Leader. It's Momoko's birthday, and everyone has got together for a surprise party for her. Omura couldn't make it, though. He's busy cycling. Also, Gen can't stay. He's gotta work. Happy birthday. Mac is fighting Gallon, but instead of transforming into Leo to do the same, Gen is helping a boy called Leo save his younger brother, Asuka. He gets Asuka to the hospital and asks Leo about what happened. Their parents died in the attack, and now if he loses Asuka, he'll have no one. Gen explains that he understands. He had a younger brother, not ruther, too, which is news to me. That brother was lost in a kaiju attack. Gen reassures little Leo that he still has his brother. Dan turns up. Mac has had a bad day. They've lost more Mackies than ever before. BDS works. Why is Gen here? Why is Gen here helping two children when he could be out there fighting Gallon, where he could prevent there from being more victims? Gen, you're doing Mac's job when you have a duty as Ultraman Leo. Gen heads out, turns into Leo, and the fight is going fine until Gallon's little brother Leader appears, and now Leo is getting owned. It don't help he has the fate of those two boys on his mind. See, when Red isn't here, I get to read out all the typos.
I see.
It's kind of fun.
I guess this is payback for Red pointing out our mispronunciations.
True. There we go. Antagonistic co-hosting. It works, folks. Dan uses his psychokinesis to drive off Gallon and Leader. This motherfucker is, like, going to die by the end of this episode, at the end of the series.
But he will show up again.
Every time, this is shortening his lifespan, if you can recall from the first few episodes.
It'd be really funny if they did just like he did just die and he committed to it just the way like Taro did.
Later, Gen flashes back to trying and failing to save his little brother Astra. Dan appears and reports that Asuka is putting up a good fight, but his fate is uncertain. Dan realizes that Gen sees himself in his own failure in these two brothers, and it has clouded his judgment. Dan tells Gen that the pain he felt is felt by so many every time Earth comes under attack, and it's his duty to prevent that. The vibes on this moment are so bad, and we'll talk about it. Gen reaffirms his commitment to the cause, and then word comes in that the kaiju are attacking once again. Gen transforms into Leo and fights, but he's outnumbered. At this point, a new Ultra appears, and Omura on his bike tells Dan, hey, that's Ultraman Leo's little brother. And I gotta imagine Dan is thinking, how the fuck do you know that?
How did you fucking know that?
Leo and Astra exchange a look and then defeat the two kaiju together. Astra flies away to the sky. The narrator is like, how did he survive? Where did he come from? Where is he going? Nobody knows. And I'm like, okay, I guess maybe we'll get into that next episode. Momoko's birthday party is resumed. This time even Omura makes it with a card too. Oh wait, the card's from Dan. Omura also delivers a message from Dan, Leo, and Asuka. I misread this. Omura also delivers a message from Dan, Leo and Asuka are okay. Everyone celebrates the end. The fuck is this episode?
I don't know. It's wild. Okay.
Can I say the vibes when, I don't know if you had this too, or maybe I'm overthinking things, but when Dan is like, that's right, Gen, and every time an alien touches down on Earth and attacks us, think of all of the people, all the families that will be torn apart unless we do something about it. And, like, I get what they're doing, but also, I feel like more nuanced discussion of this is needed than what this episode maybe provides, especially as the series dabbles more into the sympathetic angle, too.
I feel like maybe I didn't clue into it the way you did, but also maybe, like, my brain was kind of off, because it's like, yeah, that's just Ultraman.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my issue with it might just be entirely in the framing of it feels like it's couching it in, like, oh, anytime an alien shows up, and, like, even if you change that verbiage to, like, oh, this is why we fight, which, like, leaves it looser enough to be like, hey, you know, sometimes we are attacked and we have to fight back, or else, like, families are going to be torn apart. But it really just sounds like he's saying, like, oh, anytime one of these fuckers shows up on our lawn, do you know what they're going to do to us, man? This is the revenge we must carry out. Don't let anyone hurt them like they hurt us. It just feels bad. I don't know.
It's funny because, like, he says this, but also he's like, as captain of Mac, I don't want to rely on Leo, but also because we're both aliens, I trust you more than anyone. While also saying this about other aliens.
Yeah, like there's some weird energy this episode with all the alien metaphor stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have named the little kid Leo. That bothered me.
It's because his name is Leo, and then again here's him, and then the brother's name is Asuka, which is really, really close to Astra.
It's so, yeah.
It's poetic. It's cinematic parallels. It's it's like seeing yourself in someone else. That's what they call good writing, right? when you make the names like identical.
It's like how Twin Peaks has like a couple different sets of Mike and Bob.
True.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about Astra?
Yeah, we gotta have to.
Okay, I gotta say, this is like the most definitive shooting down of the thing, which I already knew was kind of fake and only in my head, but the fact that Astra is just another Ultra guy, I'm just like, oh, that planet, like, they're just like all Ultra people there like that, which I feel like makes the Ultraman Leo was the Ultra of another world that was just a lot like Earth. Thing I kind of had in my brain dissipate with great intensity. And,
I feel like it still kind of works in the way that, like, well, Dan is also an Ultra, right?
Yeah, but Dan isn't from... I feel like it's different from Leo. Leo and Astra are from that planet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess that's true.
Like, I'm envisioning, and I know that this isn't exactly correct, but, like, I've always thought about it a little bit like Ultraman Leo was someone that existed prior and then merged with the guy on Leo's planet, kind of like a Go situation.
Okay. For me, I was kind of like hard
locked in. I don't really think is how the show works, but
yeah, for me, I kind of locked in on like it was just like a 7 situation.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, vindicated by Asuka or Astra. Fuck. I will say, I will come clean. It is impossible for me to be a fan of the franchise and not know Astra exists.
I'm sure. I'm sure this dumb motherfucker's gonna show up again.
So yeah, coming to the show, I knew Astra existed. And in a way, I was almost like kind of surprised he was not here until now, because like, oh no. I know he exists.
That's funny.
Because I was like, oh, he's like, because obviously I didn't know enough about like Leo itself, other than just like, oh yeah, there's Leo, and also he has a brother named Astra, and like, and presumably like they show up a bit in like legacy stuff, but like, or crossover stuff. But so it's like, oh yeah, Astra's just kind of like in debuts as like, I guess maybe a retool, and also they aren't really committing to it in a big way, like. Despite introducing it, it doesn't seem like it's changing the formula for most of the episodes going forward.
I can't believe I'm saying this. I think I would have preferred if it was, like, one of the older Ultras.
You don't like a new guy?
I don't like a new guy when it's set up as, oh, part of the drama of this episode is Gen being sad about his dead brother, and then, oh, don't worry, his dead brother's actually alive.
Yeah. Gen starts being sad about his dead brother, who we didn't know about, and also in the same episode, the dead brother shows up.
Yeah, and like,
I think
this could have been an incredible moment where Gen is like, oh, I'm sad I don't have an older brother, and then Zoffi shows up and is like, don't worry, kid, I'll be your new older brother.
I like that you went to Zoffi.
I mean, it'd be the best one.
Yeah. I do think some of this is just like, unfortunately, and when you're writing a show in the 70s, this is just what happens, especially when they're like retooling on the fly kind of thing.
Yeah.
They're not like thinking about like setting up things for later. It's sort of like, oh, well, this is the status quo now. Oh, there's a new captain. Oh, wait, it's because we shipped the new one off to space. Don't worry about it. He's Go's dad now. Yeah, it's just like, I guess like I can't. It's hard for me to say like, oh, well, I wish it was someone else when it's like, I know this guy existed for like years.
Yeah.
But also it is kind of like, I think obviously I'm like, well, yeah, it's kind of just like the classic 50 episode toku show in the 70s method of we are haphazardly introducing and setting up an entire thing in a single episode because we have to change the direction of the show. But also I think it's interesting the fact that like he's introduced and you wouldn't know that from the next 2 episodes at all.
Nope. And also, I'm gonna be honest, I don't trust that he's gonna show up in this show again. Maybe a couple more times.
I assume he'll show up like a few more than once. We'll just see how frequent it is.
Yeah. I think when you do, like, when you pull something like this, you want to make sure the fight is really cool. I don't think this fight is it's not bad, it's just not particularly outstanding for having as many guys involved as it has. If that makes sense.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's nothing amazing. I think it's, it's kind of neat, like a team spacing beam, but
I think I've gone full Jisoji on the Spacium beam.
Remember when the only time in Blazer they did the Spacium beam was the parentage one that he definitely earned?
Yeah, no, honestly, I think I might be red with that one. It's honestly based. The fucking Divorcium beam. I'm trying to think of anything else about this episode. Dan saying like, Dan has a weird whiplash of 3 moods here, where he goes, where the fuck were you? Oh, you were helping children. If you weren't helping children, you could have helped more children, dipshit. And it's just the most ridiculous.
I kind of, like, I do get the logic where he's coming from, though.
I do as well.
Because like his like, maybe it's the phrasing is bad, but his argument is like, he's like, listen, I obviously think this is the like good moral position to take, but also you are the only one here who can become Ultraman, and we need you to become Ultraman, and like there's other people who can take care of it. There's other people who could have lifted the rock off of him.
This is honestly they would never do this, especially with children involved, but this is honestly like a point where I feel like maybe the show would benefit from being just a little bit darker, because boy, do I sometimes feel like I am not feeling the weight necessarily of the, like, again, sometimes when you try to be a short-term hero that has long-term negative impact on the rest of the city that needs to be saved. Because do I sure feel like that's something they like to say, and then we don't actually see it or feel it. Sometimes they're pretty good about it, I feel, but other times I'm just like, I kind of get what you're saying, Dan, but oh god, are we not gonna actually really deal with that?
Yeah, I guess it's just like we're seeing a lot of like Mac dying. To a fucking dinosaur.
See, they're
guy.
okay to die. Yeah.
But also, like, we don't get, because like we're focused, the most of the violence, we mostly focus on these kids that get saved. You don't see as much of like, oh, there are people dying. Also, why is Omar on his bike this entire episode? Why didn't he just go inside?
The bike is important. Yeah, I saw a post, I think it was either on Blue Sky or Reddit, that was like, have you ever noticed how in post-apocalyptic stuff, nobody's ever on a bike, even though it would be extremely useful, because it's not, like, aesthetic enough to have people just biking around in the ruins?
Excuse you, Days Gone be out. Hashtag
well,
Freaker Gang.
motorcycles are aesthetic. Bicycles. Days Gone, but if that guy was on a bike, it'd be so much better.
I guess yeah. There's a distinction being made between bicycles and motorcycles. I guess like one of them is like it requires fuel.
Yes. But I was thinking of that when you just see Nomura biking around this entire episode, like, you know, he can just escape. He can just pedal fast enough.
Yeah.
Also, too, we do see a lot of Mac dying, but also a little bit undermined for me is the fact that, oh, wow, has the team never mattered less?
Yeah.
Which I do kind of like in a way. But
I do think it's like the team. I don't know. It's like there's like it's a double-edged sword where it's like they can make this team more expendable by not focusing on it as much, but also like if every person in Mac is a red shirt, then
yeah,
it's like, well, it doesn't like have an emotional impact. It's just like, well, I guess we know statistically the states, like in sort of like a million is a statistic kind of way. But like like we don't feel like it's like, oh damn, like I see in the abstract how this is bad, but I'm not connected to it emotionally.
Yeah, it's hard to care sometimes.
Yeah.
Which, ironically, I feel like is we keep comparing the show to Victory Gundam, which is something that I want to try to not do as much to make sure
honest,
our
I feel like we've done it like
legible.
Twice.
Yes. I might be doing it more eternally in my head, but that is a show that a criticism often levied towards it is that there is so much killing off of the cast that people by the end are just like, I don't give a shit anymore. And comparing and contrasting to that,
Dan is like, no, not Aoshima. He was the one of us who was most like a Shrike.
Yeah. I feel like that show, in comparison, I'm just like, okay, no, I feel like they do enough groundwork to make me care about most of those people. Most, keyword being most. This is definitely just like when Mac members get killed, I'm just like, who are you? Which is a problem.
It's funny that they do a pretty decent job of like, if there's a Mac guy of the week, making him feel like a guy we can give a shit about.
Yeah.
But like usually the Mac guys being killed off are like not guys we've seen before.
Yeah.
Maybe not even in that episode.
Yeah, it's like, what's more lethal, being an F1 driver or a Mac team member?
It's like, damn, how did we go from Zat to Mac in terms of just like... Zat would have had this all handled.
Yeah, they
just
would have done like a big mouse trap with a block of cheese on it and somehow zero casualties.
They would have put like a big Operation Basket. They would have put a big basket with like a little cupcake under it, and the kaiju would have gone under it, and like they would have trapped it in. Like
they call it like Operation Cain and Abel, and then like get one of the brothers to kill the other one by mistake.
In Gamera versus Baragon, which I may mention again in the next episode we talk about, there's an operation called Operation Rearview Mirror.
Does it involve a rearview mirror?
It was inspired by one.
I see.
Go listen to Turtle Tea Time episode 2.
One day I will watch those movies.
Yeah.
I gotta watch the Turtle movies at some point.
I gotta schedule the next one, Catherine. Anyway. Brad, who made this episode?
I was about to say, are we ready to wrap this one up?
I think we can. Like, it's like it's a weird perfunctory in a way for that episode where it's like exists to set up a character who disappears right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Directed by Kiyosumi Fukusawa and written by Shigemitsu Taguchi.
Special effects director is Koichi Takano. Leader and Gallon are designed by Tetsuo Osawa. I don't need to tell you what they're named after. It's a theme. It's a pun. You know.
As an American, I only understand one of these brothers' names.
That's a you problem. Leaders are repurposed Antara suit while Gallon is a new one. Also, I could get no design info on this character, but Astra, suit actor Kenichi Kasumi, and it will be that for the rest of the show.
Oh, okay, so he will show up.
Yeah.
For sure. Alright, episode 23. The Mischievous Alien Who Fell Out of Bed. Featuring Rainbow Kaiju Renborer. Sure, I guess you could call it that. And Coral Alien.
Yeah.
Okay. The inhabitants of planet Koro are a mischievous people who love music. When one alien, Koro, falls off his space bed from listening to too much music, he and his bed land on Earth, where he is found by Toru, Kaoru, and a bunch of their friends, who are all playing Mac. This includes the biggest kid playing the role of the captain with the crutch. They feed Koro donuts, and I guess he goes raiding around town for more donuts because Gen has to report the incidents to Mac HQ. Alien Koro mentions his tail lets him control Renberer, the kaiju that eats rainbows. The kids really want to see this, but Koro is like, nah, I probably shouldn't summon a kaiju, and several of the children accuse Koro of lying. This pushes Koro to summon Renberer. Mac launches to fight, but Gen has made contact with Koro and established that this kaiju is no threat. Koro makes Renberer do some funny poses, then gets ready to dismiss the kaiju. Unfortunately, the kid captain is a little too curious and wants the tail for himself to control Renberer. He pulls off Koro's tail, and Renberer goes berserk. Luckily, the appearance of rain drives Renberer off. The Renberer hates rain. Koro will have to grow his tail back, which takes 20 hours. It goes a little faster if he does a handstand, though. Alternatively, Koro offers to take the Earthlings on his bed and run away to space. It can only support 150 kilograms, though. The show very meaningfully points out that the kid captain is fat, and then he's like, this is my fault, I'm not running away. Koro is moved. Renberer returns after the rain to eat a rainbow, which Koro says will make it 100 times stronger. Can't have that. Gen turns into Leo and has a boxing match with Renberer. The kids even have a round counter sign and they ring a bell. Leo KOs Renberer, and the kids plus Mac watch over the unconscious kaiju while Koro gets back to his handstand. Renberer wakes up when morning comes and Mac and Leo have to fight once again. Koro's tail grows back to a sufficient length to control Renberer, and Koro stops the fight. Renberer bows to everyone and tries to put back together a pylon it destroyed. It feels bad about the whole situation and returns home. Koro heads off home as well, but not before Dan warns him to not cause any more mischief. The kids give him some donuts for the road, for which he's very grateful. On his way back to Planet Koro, he hears music once again, and we return to Earth to see the kids are trying to summon Koro back to Earth with music and donuts. The end. Renberer, bad mouthfeel. Don't like saying that as often as I had.
Yeah, there's all these where, like, I was just talking about this, about, like, because I was talking to someone about, like, the Jolliver Dunbine subs, and part of the reason being, like, some of those official localization names just make no sense for English. And sometimes, yeah, it does sometimes just seem like, you know, Japanese organizations don't always take into account how, because they're like, oh yeah, we're basing off of this, it's always going to sound like this in Japanese, but like they don't necessarily think about how it's going to sound in a language where like they aren't syllabic necessarily.
Yeah.
So it's just like, you know, my opening notes for this episode were, one, that this episode starts with the narrator basically doing the Douglas Adams Hitchhiker's Guide, space is really big quote. And the second thing is, like, the way he talks about the alien Coco reminds me of last week when Red talks about their dad's annoyance at David Attenborough being babyish tone when a kid is a baby animals on screen. I hope Red enjoys his insight when they edit.
It should be noted for the audience that Alien Koro is just a kid in a funny suit.
Yeah,
with, like...
it's basically like the Space Boys from Taro.
Yeah.
Which incidentally, the kids start this episode by singing that same song to themselves again. Here, there it is again. I guess it's like, you know, number one top in the charts that year in Japan.
This is yet another Ultra Series classic moment where I'm like, all right, whose kid was this? Um, which I know is probably not the case, but it does have that energy to it.
This feels like a Taro episode.
It does.
And I don't think this is a case of we had a leftover script that we're converting into the episode. It feels more like the ratings are in flux, so maybe we'll do a Taro style episode and see how that goes, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think this is worse than what Taro episodes usually were like, though. I did not care for this one.
I think it's fine. It does just feel out of character.
I did not care for Alien Koro. I didn't think his antics were all that funny. There is all, like Red points it out here, there's just like a lot of weird shit around food and weight this episode with the donut thing, and the one other kid who feels bad.
I feel like it would have been better if they just went more absurd with it, so that he was like twice the size and like picking his teeth with a toothpick.
Frank Herbert description voice.
Koro starts levitating. My dude, my Arrakis.
I don't really care about the Kaiju Renberer.
It's whatever.
Yeah.
I told you it was coming back. It is funny. This alien is weak to rain and also eats rainbows. Are both things that happen kind of in Baragon versus Gamera.
I think the one part of this that works for me is I think the boxing match thing is kind of cute and fun, but we're
still in that show boxing boom.
Yeah. I keep thinking I should do like a Rocky rewatch, because I've been kind of feeling
clearly that. What we should do is the Ashton Joe Detour Corey, that'll take 2 years to do and also cost us $1 billion with the cost of those releases.
I have that first one. I've been poking through it, actually, kind of, not to spoil the opening segment for like weeks from now. And I'm having a good time, but oh wow, did I think that there was only going to be 2 of those hardcovers, and that is not the case.
I should definitely check out Ashton Joe at some point. I don't know. I don't know. I think it's GGP is doing one of either Ashton Joe or Ippo in their like post Gundam era. I don't know which one, but I have to assume it might be Ashton Joe because that's the one that's finished and was probably similarly fully adapted. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, by the time I'm done buying all that manga, it's like, fuck, I could have bought like a dozen eggs.
Or, like Gaston, 4 dozen eggs.
Yeah. It's like a down payment on a house.
That's how you know. That's how Gaston is a bougie as fuck. He's like 4 dozen eggs each day in the morning, and it's like, damn, you can afford that.
Was it Austin? I think it was Austin Walker who on a podcast, I don't remember where this came up, talked about how he had a friend who, like, for the longest time thought Gaston was just supposed to be like an ironically heroic figure in Beauty and the Beast.
Really?
Am I remembering this correctly? I don't know. Red might know. But I think about that a lot, where I'm just like, that's wild. Yeah, I don't know if I got too much to say. I really did not like this episode.
I think the rainbow eating was fun. It's dumb, but it's fun. It is really funny. Just like, oh, he's like sitting upside down, and they have to like take a ruler out to measure the tail if it's okay. I do think it's dumb. The kid's like, damn, I'm gonna steal his tail right now. This surely won't end well or badly.
Yeah. No, I think I do my best to be self-aware when watching these episodes and be like, sometimes they're just gonna do one for the kids, and like, I don't want to be dismissive of that, because that's who it's made for, first and foremost.
Yeah.
But also, just watching this, I was like, this ain't it.
Yeah, I think this is, like, we are probably just getting that, like, mid-20s episode range of, like, we don't know what the show's going to be. And...
Or what they want it to be after they've got the initial batch of...
Well, I say we don't know what the show's going to be is, like, also writers are also not sure what the show's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think, to their credit, like, we're still getting episodes that stay true to the Leo-isms, even as we're getting, like, weirder stuff thrown in. Like, even if it's, like, a bit messy, there's still, like, a... Like, obviously this episode is, like, this feels like more like a Taro episode than a Leo episode, but it's still, like... It's bookended by episodes that still have Leo stuff in it.
Yeah, and I do think that a shakeup is maybe a little bit required, because I was worried for a stretch there. It's like, okay, I kind of feel like maybe we're running the formula a little bit thin, and it's not too bad of an idea to branch out to maybe some other types of, like, episodic ideas instead of just, like, Monster shows up, Gen is sad, Dan yells at him, training, Gen prevails, everyone's happy.
Yeah.
So I'm happy we're out of that mode at the very least. But yeah, this episode especially, but the first two episodes of this batch, I was kind of like, about. I'm trying to think of, like, anything else more I have to... I kind of wish... I know they can't really do this, but I do kind of wish that, like, they just did a full suit, like, monster costume and maybe just had the kid do the voice.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you were down on, like, I remember you down on outfit. I remember you down on Space Boys as well.
Yeah, I do not care for it.
I do feel like I didn't have a problem with this the way somehow I don't have a problem with this in the Space Boys the way I do Alien Wild for some reason.
Yeah.
I actually don't know how to explain it to you. Something about me viscerally hates Alien Wild. But I do think, like...
I mean, part of it has to, like... I mean, it is a lot to... If you're doing kid-shaped kaiju, which, like, for one, I would just have made this a grown-ass man kaiju and have it be a kid's voice. I think that's fine. But, like, if you have a kid who needs to get into a suit, you can't expect them to do the full, like, coverage, like, mascot style suit.
I will say, in the original Ultraman, Pigmon was the suit actor was a child in both episodes.
Oh, well...
But also, maybe that didn't go so well.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Well, I would actually know the physics, but, he's, like, quite a consideration. There's, like, stuff we don't know about, but,
Yeah, probably.
Like, he's, like, not great being in these suits, so I don't know. There might be a trepidation of, like, actually putting a child in it for a prolonged period, especially if, like, maybe they had prior experience with Pigmon. They're like, oh, no.
I would not want... If I was a father, I would not want my kid.
Yeah, exactly. However, fuck what other parents want. I want the real. I want for my entertainment purposes. I do feel like when we have what we have already, the legacy of, like, Ultraman, like, alien designs, it does definitely feel like a step down when they just, like, Star Trek it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like, just as a whole, I'm just like, if I can see the guy's face, I'm feeling a little weird about it.
Yeah, that's probably one of the things that, like, makes, like, I'm just gonna, like, if I ever get into Star Trek, just like, oh, I have to deal with the fact that, like, oh, these aliens are obviously people, and, like, they could have done a Mephiles. Like, there's the US. You have more money than fucking... Well, I guess, I don't know. Maybe they don't have more money for Star Trek than they do for Ultraman. I don't know.
Yeah. Especially
I guess it is easier when it's like, oh yeah, this is the guys... not the same guys, but the successors of the guys who worked on Godzilla, so they have the knowledge, institutional knowledge.
Yeah, like, I don't know shit about Star Trek, but I am under the impression that, at least for the original Star Trek run, they, like, really had to fight hard to justify it even existing and being on in the first place, and like, I don't know how that translated to funding necessarily. So I will also one day watch that original series. It is, like, honestly ridiculous. I like how little Star Trek knowledge and experience I have.
Same
considering
here.
what other stuff I'm into.
I say watching Sequest instead.
Yeah, honestly, that's fucked.
It's just weird how this is played out.
Yeah.
Sequest season 2, not good, by the way. Fucking dumb changes. Anyway, who made this episode?
This one was directed by Kiyosumi Fukusawa again, and then written by Bunzo Wakatsuki.
Once again, special character is Koichi Takano. Koro is played by Yasuhiro Matsuda. Renborer is designed by Kengo Kime.
Yeah.
Why the alien call the donuts 110? Is there a pun there?
I don't know. Probably.
Anyway. I think next we have the best episode this week, probably.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Episode 24, The Beautiful Virgo Maiden. Featuring Gamorot the Robot Kaiju, Alien Sarlin, and the young girl Carolyn.
Sweet Caroline.
Yeah, it's probably Caroline, actually.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it probably doesn't make too much of a difference.
Yeah. A spaceship crashes to Earth, and a young woman and an old man escape the wreckage. These are... Well, okay, hold on. That's Caroline, according to the booklet. This summary has both with and without the E, so I doubted myself. It's Caroline. All right. A spaceship crashes to Earth, and a young woman and an old man escape the wreckage. These are Caroline and her grandfather, Dodal. Mac arrive later, pick up some interesting space metal from the wreckage, and then begin the search for the aliens. I love Roswell. Gen finds them first, almost entirely by accident. Caroline is trying to get a doctor to visit her grandfather because she doesn't trust Earthlings enough to take him to a hospital. And she bumps into Gen, who shows her some mild kindness, and she's immediately struck by this. Later, she tracks him down and asks him to help her. She can trust him because she knows he's not a human, and also he's a good man. He helps treat Dodal and later watches the stars with Caroline. They talk about the tragic fates of their home planets. Caroline is from planet Sarlin, which was the most beautiful planet of the Virgo constellation until the robots her grandfather built rebelled and killed everyone. The Butlerian Jihad! Those robots need her grandfather, so him and Caroline have been in flight ever since, and they aren't out of the woods yet. Gen promises to protect them. It was at this moment I realized... she is not making it to the end of this episode.
Yeah.
The next day, Gen is acting like he's going on a date as he goes to visit the aliens again. Dodal's condition is improved, and Caroline has picked chrysanthemums, and everything's great. A call comes in from Mac HQ. Bad news, a new spaceship has arrived. The spaceship in question is the giant robot from the flashback. This is Gamorot, or as I keep wanting to say, Gamerot, because that's how it's spelled. And I love him with all my heart. The Sarlin robots offer Earth an ultimatum. Hand over Dodal and Caroline, or else. Mac convened to discuss this, and Dan says, well, our job is to protect Earth. And Gen responds, no way. We can hand over my girlfriend and her grandfather. Dan asks Gen if he knows where the aliens are, and Gen demonstrates his expertise in deception. He looks really shifty. He yells no way too hard, and then runs away. Most impressive. True. See, maybe this is just like layers of deception where he's like, if I look really suspicious, they'll be like, surely he couldn't be hiding anything.
As we established, don't forget, Gen's a himbo.
True. Gen runs straight to the aliens and retrieves them. I don't know where he thinks he's taking them, but Dan appears and offers them safe passage off Earth. He was going to save them all along. Read aside because I'm aware I might not be at the episode. This is, to me, a bit of a cop-out. Feels like a missed opportunity to actually depict an interesting conflict between Gen and Dan, but oh well, it's time for the fight. The incredibly cool and sick robot Gamorot appears and goes straight for the fleeing Dan, Dodal, and Caroline, firing its red lasers and extending arms and legs out of its shell to fight Ultraman Leo. Leo isn't doing so great on account of how cool this robot is. Luckily for him, a disposable woman likes him. It turns out Caroline was a robot built by Dodal who learned how to love. She has a flashback to all 3 good times she had with Gen and transforms into her robot form and flies straight to the machine on Gamorot's belt and explodes. This helps, I think. Leo kicks off Gamorot's head and the day is saved-ish. Gen, Dan, and Dodal mourn at a grave for Caroline, the young girl from Sarlin. Dodal says even if she was an android, she was still my granddaughter. He says he'll remain on Earth to be with her at the end. I hate it when girls die.
Yeah. Despite the fact that you only hate her.
God damn it. I refuse this. That being said, another Brad L. It simply works for me when they fridge the disposable woman. No. This is really egregious though in terms of like how obvious it is she is going to not make it this episode.
They didn't have to do that.
No, and like Red points out here, it really just feels like she flies into him and like the robot kind of like it. I know what they're going for, where it's like, oh, her sacrifice is what allows Gen to win. I really don't think they do a good job of selling that with how this fight is directed.
Do you know what handled this with more grace?
What?
When Kishida's alien girlfriend had the body made of dynamite.
Yeah. actually, yes. I do like her scenes with Gen in this. I think that scene where they're looking at the stars is really good. I also think the scene at the end with Dodal being like, I'm gonna stay on Earth to be with where she's to be with her and where she's buried, I think is really, really touching. The actual like sacrifice and like how ridiculous, how obvious it is that they're gonna play this for tragedy is kind of undermines it, but I like this episode overall, I would say. But it's definitely we introduced the woman and definitely imply some romantic tension only to have her die tragically, so the main character boy feels bad. It's all over this.
Yeah, like I feel like I like the episode pretty without qualifications up until she blows up, and then I'm like, well, now there's a poison pill.
Yeah,
because like I feel like the scenes with Gen and her feel good, and it's like, oh, he's making a connection with someone who's an alien, and so there's a common understanding that he feels like he doesn't necessarily have with like Momoko, for instance.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, there is more like chemistry and like interesting stuff going on here than I feel like anything we've gotten with
we even get Tsundere
so
and Momoko as like he's like showering and getting dressed to go see her.
This would have been the perfect opportunity to introduce her as like someone like, you know, they could have done a love triangle thing with one of them being an alien.
Yeah.
Against Momoko, and I actually think that there'd be kind of something interesting there.
I also I raise a counter narrative. What if the robots are the righteous revolutionary government and they're after the old like war criminals of the old regime, and it's just like, you know, it's like, oh, like, you know,
you should have seen how big the farm we had on our planet was again, and they took it away from us.
So, damn, the whole egg monopoly.
This is all thanks to that alien Che. If only we had read his book, Guerrilla Warfare. I like the stuff we get from the alien planet. I love how they have weird Jenga block tower skyscrapers. It's fun.
We don't get a lot of like infrastructure of aliens, but it's fun we get it. Like I remember how fucked up the Pegasus City was?
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's cool getting alien stuff like that.
I like how the skyscrapers are so weird, and then when it cuts to the actual robots, they just have like normal ass human scaffolding. It's really funny. That being said, the gamma rot that we see breaking out from the scaffolding and starting to like blow up the planet is really fucking cool.
Yeah, this gamma rot's really cool.
Gamma rot's really good.
Obviously, Red likes this one. Obviously.
I like this one a lot too. This definitely stands. It reminds. Oh god, this is such a deep cut, stupid fucking pull. But there is a model kit enthusiast line called Maschinenkrieger that like you probably don't know about unless you're like really into like the sci-fi Japanese like model kit scene. They did like a little like short thing where like they took a bunch of the model kits and like kept cutting to like guys as if they're like inside the suits, like live action. But like when Gamrot gets like damaged and like part of the head is like dangling from wires and shit like that, it reminded me a lot of like people trying to like take those model kits and like do battle damage in like those little like stop motion shorts and stuff like that. There's a lot of fun effect, like not miniature work. I don't think this is a miniature. Well, actually this might be miniature. I need to look at it again. I can't remember exactly how the effects look here, but there's a lot of cool practical stuff going on with like wires and this robot falling apart, parts dangling, and the flashing lights on it. It's neat. We love a Toku robot.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, let me tell you about a franchise that has all sorts of Toku robots. Celebrated its 50th anniversary the past couple days.
I do agree with Red, where I do feel like Dan being like, "Oh, I just wanted to get you off the planet the whole time." Haha, it does kind of.
It did feel cheap. It did feel like like especially because it felt like 180 compared to like before.
It feels like the show is kind of calling out Gen here for being like, "Oh, Gen, are you gonna not trust Dan to do the right thing?" And I'm like, if I was Gen, yeah, I would be a little wary of how Dan would handle this. I think that's fair. We once again have constellations are now like states or countries. I'm continuing to enjoy.
I think it's actually not uncommon because like technically constellations are also used to break up the sky into regions, and so there's a bit of like this region of space is where these planets are from. Though I will say that the constellations are defined exclusively by how the stars are positioned relative to Earth, so
we're still getting that Earth-centric cosmos in Ultraman.
Yeah. But it is fun, just like I was just like I like the idea of like from the Virgo constellation, it's like every planet's in a competition to be is the most beautiful one.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I think the Red Ranger from Q Ranger is from the Leo constellation, because that's a space team Sentai season. So there's like this is just like, might be a thing that's a common in like Japanese media too. Yeah,
that makes sense. That's just in the ether when they're making all this stuff. And I mean, like, it's just like a good like natural like space big. Only so many ways to categorize it or where things are from, and if you want to like try to have some sense of like place or
like obviously it falls apart if you think about it, which is probably why it's like something like Star Trek wouldn't go that route, because like the Vulcans don't see themselves as the Leo constellation because they're like, what's that, where is that, but like for a kids show it like that's like that way you can like understand a bit more.
It's also too there's like a degree of this that I'm always like something that really makes me go like, okay, I don't care this much is like, you ever like experience sci-fi where like they get really up its own ass about like, well, every planet, relatively speaking, has its own sense of a day. So like we need to like convert everything. It's like you could just say like standard day or something, like standard year or something, and like that obviously has some implications. But like for the sake of the audience on Earth in real life who are reading this, please just like you know, it's always a push and pull with these things. I'm trying to. Oh, yeah. I like how Gamorot feels almost like a weird 50s movie, like pulpy robot too. Like it's big and round in a way that's kind of fun, and I feel like is different from the robots we've seen before. Well, actually, you know what it kind of reminds me of is a little bit like the weird underground, shockingly lore relevant episode of Ultra 7. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the Tommy gun hand.
I kind of feel like that. It's kind of got that. I don't think it's entirely like that because I feel like the face is a bit different, but like
it's different.
The face is like a fucking Pokemon.
It feels like it's pulling from the same like era of like pulpy sci-fi though to me. Like this could be on the cover of a paperback and it would fit right at home. Yeah. I don't know what else. I you know what, my brain keeps coming back to the idea. I would have had Caroline be a new character. I would have done a love triangle, and then at the end I would have had Gen and Caroline get together, and then Momoko would be sad, but then Astra flies down and is like, hey.
You know, I didn't say this in the last episode. I actually thought what might happen was like because like, oh yeah, there's the episode where Astra shows up because they showed in the next episode preview. I was like, oh, what if Asuka quote unquote dies in the surgery and bonds with like Astra, and so now there's a new kid character in the show that like,
oh no,
that like has the dynamic with Taro and Kaoru, but also like has like Gen has to be a mentor to them. I was like, I don't know how this would play out, and then it turns out it's not actually gonna play out that way. But it was a thought I had as like a possibility.
Yeah,
especially because the alternative seems to be Astra just goes back to space, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We've seen. I don't know. I want to say we've seen Modern Ultraman, but I also think, like, based on my own experience, like, Blazer and Arc are, like, different than a lot of the shows that preceded it. So I'm also like, well, I don't know if that's necessarily indicative of, like, 10's Ultraman. It's just like, oh, maybe this is just what 20's Ultraman's going to be. But, you know, I think, like, as I'm sure as we get to the 90s and aughts, we'll see the fact that the 90s and aughts reflect in the writing. And how they cast characters and stuff like that. Like there's just gonna be a shift where, like, even if it's like mostly still episodic, there's gonna be like a bit more of a serialized bent kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas in this
honestly, I think I'm ready for it.
Yeah, it's just like how long until we get there kind of thing. And to some degree, that's kind of helped by the fact that we have to skip one of those shows for the time being. But yeah. Yeah.
I do think it is starting to weigh, and I think we've talked about this definitely with Taro, maybe even Ace a little bit too, but like, I definitely do kind of have this thing now with these longer episodic seasons where I'm like, I kind of feel like I get it, like it's fully clicked what this is, and now we're just checking in week to week to see if it's a good or bad version of it this time around.
Yeah,
and I think the serialization will help that journey a little bit. We're being like, like seeing the ebbs and flows of the actual like overall plot might help spice things up a little bit. I am concerned because I do feel like we did run to it with Blazer though too, where it's like that weaving in the monster of the week fun stuff, which you do obviously still want, and like a broader narrative can be tricky.
Yeah.
A lot of shows have failed beyond just, you know, Super Eye Productions doing that and doing it well. So
and we'll have to see
curious how that goes,
how they do it. Yeah, it is just like, you know, we are like committed to 3 week, and like more than that would kill us probably. But also it does like sometimes feel like, well, we are just gonna be like, oh well, that's the show this week for like, you know, a few months, kind of thing. Just because like that's just how long the shows are.
I mean, that's just the nature of like.
Yeah.
Realistically, again, like that's what these. They gotta fill like a year of broadcast time, right?
Yeah, because like if you're a kid, you're just tuning in week for week, and it's fine.
Yeah. Some of you are watching after school with the goldfish crackers.
Yeah.
Which I'm absolutely sure that's what a Japanese school child was doing in the 1970s.
Yeah, they call them koi senbu.
Yeah. There we go.
This is why we're God's strongest shoulders.
True. We have a holy mission. I don't know if I have too much more to say about this, except it was directed by Isao Maeda and written by Keijiro Okutsu, who I forgot to look up. So I'll double check next time, but I believe is a new writer. So.
Yeah. The special effects director is Nobuo Iijima. Game Ross is designed by Tetsuo Osawa. Alien Sarlin. The alien forms we only see in silhouette form, and conveniently they just get like old suits from earlier kaiju from the show, and just like, yeah, the silhouette is, you can't tell them. Seems specifically use Alien Kettle, Vibe, and North Satan as like the suits, but you know, because they're silhouetted, you can't really tell. Carolyn is played by Mariko Matsuoka, while Donald, the grandpa, is a guy we've seen before. The actor is Hideo Yamamoto. I saw he was in one episode of Return of Ultraman as like a bit guy, so no one with a name, so I didn't really I didn't write it down. But more importantly, he played, I forgot the guy's name, but he played the sci-fi writer in the final episode of Ultra Q.
Damn, he's looking. Oh, I guess he's looking older.
Well, you know, it's been 8 years.
It's been, yeah, it's been a bit.
Yeah. After this show is done, we're taking a bigger jump. That's for sure in terms of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's me for the trivia stuff.
Color timers.
Yeah. Episode 22 is stupid. 4 minutes 8 seconds and also 3 minutes 9 seconds. The flashback is 34 seconds, and Astra shows up for 2 minutes 1 second.
Okay, Astra flawless record so far.
Yeah. Leo, how could you be more like your brother?
Leo, okay, it leaves forever. Does not elaborate.
Episode 23, 2 minutes 52 seconds and 2 minutes 1 second.
Okay.
And then episode 24, 3 minutes 58 seconds.
Damn, that's way over.
Yeah. Fucker.
Emails.
Yeah. First one is by Tep once again. I just realized we haven't got a Subjects email in a while, despite this being his favorite show. But yeah, for now, Tep says, donuts, huh? Hello, Ultra Q. I have to say, Go would have been my last choice to do, but I don't think he's sexy, but I agree with your logic. Anyway, unreasonably long email ahead. Don't worry, there have been longer ones. I can't wait to hear what y'all have to say about this odd batch of episodes. On rewatch, I was struck by how strong most of the Astra intro is and how Leo it feels. Astra's presence feels awkwardly added in. It would have been a stronger episode without having him come back. Maybe they have introduced him later, question mark. Maybe would have been less abrupt. But such a retool life. It also has Dan placing a reassuring cane on Gen's shoulder, which is a great moment. Romantic, even. I had fun with the core episode, but the tail growth bit, well, I still don't know what they're thinking. That said, enjoy how Gen always seems to be annoyed when Leo goes goofy mode. He got annoyed at Saburo, too. Quote, everything I loved was destroyed and I have to deal with this Ultraman Taro, parentheses, 1973, close parentheses, shit. Do I look like Kotaro Higashi to you? Close, unquote.
Yeah, it definitely has some Taro energy.
Yeah, it is funny when it's just like, well, the show has become just completely different. Also, that kid was seriously about. If that kid was serious about role playing Dan, they would have beaten Kuro Seijin to death with hammers. I forgot the kid.
True.
The one kid is just like role playing Dan with a cane. I'm like, I don't think you should do that.
Yeah.
It's a bit fucked up. The Carolyn episode didn't stick out the first time I watched it, but every subsequent rewatch has confirmed it's a real standout favorite for me. Again, surprised you, but in a way that makes sense. He's in love with Momoko, but when he meets another quote-unquote alien he can relate to as an alien, who isn't going to hit him with a cane, the immediate sense of connection is overwhelming. The episode adds a lot of layers to the theme of Gan as an alien on Earth, who sees as home, and to Dan as well. Also, the statement that aliens can't trust humanity is nice. We didn't talk about, but we have like the extended scene of Momoko just like wanting to get medicine, but being denied because of like the private healthcare system.
Yeah.
I'm just being like, no, next patient, go away, lady. And there's the Ultra 70 twist that reframes a lot of stuff in the show. I guess it is an Ultra 7 tradition to maybe some kinds of robot. Thank you, Kat, for recognizing my Leo Yaoi warrior status. Maybe I need to watch Kamen Rider X. What other shows should Leo heads watch? And I guess now we'll be having conversations between the emails as a thread between the podcast. Which, fine. I'll take it. Thank you for your email.
Thank you.
Did you have anything more to add to that, or no?
I don't think so.
Okay. Anyway, here's, speaking of which, here's Kat's email. With the subject line, okay, fuck it, let's just talk about Dune more.
I'm down.
I'm going to say I honestly like the way the conspiracy winds up in Messiah. Maybe that's via transitive property of my aforementioned side-tail bias, but I just like how it refuses a classic hero showdown. Paul spends his whole book trying to figure out what exactly the trap with Duncan is. This book is also the coolest Duncan. And then they just nuke the building he's in. Then the final confrontation is a member of the conspiracy going, match which of the being, Paul goes no and has it executed. I too am excited to see the movie version adapts all those extremely filmable scenes like tense negotiation with the bandages for a jar of Paul's semen. And yeah, you can definitely stop reading basically at any point. I would definitely recommend the second one as a great little coda to the first, but as well as 3 and 4 all leave off on a pretty conclusive place that makes its points while clearly setting up a direction things will continue. In 5 and 6 are kind of set. 5 and 6 are kind of a set, and indeed a little difficult to explain what happens to them. But I'm also a huge sicko for heretics. Plenty of Herbert insanity, but it's got the Messiah spice. Chapter House is wobble hand, but the conclusion is as true Islam was Yuri all along. So, I feel like heretics and Chapter House are a blur in my mind. But yeah.
I'm now excited to get to Heretics though if it has that Dune Messiah sauce.
Speaking of which, if you are reading the whole series, you get to see the crazy arc of Herbert slowly trying to convince himself to be less weird about gay people. Very funny.
I have seen the quotes about Leto's troops and
yes.
what he has to say about that.
I love that one because like, is Duncan speaking for Herbert, or is like the fact the character responding to Duncan is like, oh, you're a man out of time, like a reflection of Herbert's feelings. It's spicy, I think. Anyway, huge agree on the deep time forces over a great man influence reading. Love that one of the first acknowledgements of that in the first book is shoved into one of the 4 appendices. Book that can only barely contain itself.
Can I say?
Yeah.
The audiobook does not do the appendices, and that is such a mistake.
Oh, I guess that is the thing that should be looked at.
That should be in there. If you listen to Dune via audiobook, listener, you should look up a print version through whatever means and read the appendices at the very least, because they add quite important details, especially that one about kinds.
Yeah. I should definitely reread at some point. A bit farther down the road. All the more reason why I hope one day Shalvajrana gets to it, but we'll see. Anyway, right, Ultraman. I also do want to add that I've seen people propose that since himbo and bimbo are actually somewhat different vibes, herbo should be a valid word to represent himbo like a woman.
Okay, there we go.
I.e. a clueless lesbian with a big muscles and a big heart.
There we go.
I'm also very amused by you guys implying again bimboification in the same episode you accidentally called him a woman in another instance. Did we?
Yeah, I can't
well,
think back.
thank you, audience, for noticing things we just clearly forgot. Especially since Tep's Leo shitposting is lately involved a scenario like, again, we have to train to defeat the fearsome Force Femme alien, put on the heels. I do have to admit that other than highlights moments like the whip, I have pretty shaky memory of the stretch of the show. I remember a lot more of it being like those early training heavy two-parters, but I sure have distinct memories of some stuff that comes later, and oh boy. So I guess it's just more... This is a more conventional middle stretch that blends together. Yeah, I guess, that's Toku, alright.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
We're about halfway now, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're just short of it. Funny enough, for episode 99 is right at the halfway point.
Yeah.
Because we just watched episode 24 because 51 episodes, episode 26 is the halfway point.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be at the halfway through Leo at episode 100.
Wow.
It's crazy.
The episodes better be good. I'm rooting for you, Leo writers and directors and suit people
from the past.
From 50-ish years ago.
It is 50 years ago, yeah. 51, I guess, now, but...
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your email.
For your emails.
Was that it?
Yeah.
Okay. Then next week, I guess you can join us for Ultraman Leo episodes 25 through 27.
Nope.
What?
Nope. Next week, it's Deco Quarry.
Oh.
Next week, yeah, you get a week off. Because Red and I are going to Hokkaido in search of the gold bars.
I'm on vacation.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah,
leaving.
Next week, we got our first Deco Quarry on the first 6 volumes of Golden Kamuy, the manga series. You are reading the manga, you are not watching the anime, just to be clear. Yeah. So that's what we're doing next week, but the week after. The big 100.
Yeah.
And
triple digit podcast.
Yeah. This is also my first podcast to reach triple digits.
True.
And also my first podcast to reach double digits. And also my first
podcast to reach single digits? Yeah.
Breaking so many milestones with Ultra Q.
There's a lot of I almost said landmines, not milestones. What the fuck? Yeah, there's a lot of milestones for you.
Yeah. It feels weird because I'm on one hand I knew obviously this could be compared to any other project I would have done covering any other series, there's obviously the long one it would have been. But also just oh damn, we did make it to 100. And obviously we had side stuff that technically means we have put out more than 100 pods, but
yeah,
we did make it to 100 of the main show pods, and that feels crazy.
It is.
That's in GGP terms the middle of victory, funny enough. I don't know what age era number it is in terms of Ultraman, though. But I guess that's for the future to see.
Yeah, we'll see if we get there.
I hope.
Yeah.
Let's not think about negativity. Anyway. Don't depress me. If you want to follow the show, you can follow us at Ultra_Q. That's QUBBE on Twitter, and no _ on Blue Sky. You can follow me at DeCrowns on Twitter and Blue Sky. We also have the email ultrapod@gmail.com. Of course, send in emails about Golden Kamuy and put Golden Kamuy in the subject line for next week if you're down to talk about Golden Kamuy. And we have the Coffee Ultra Fund, theoretically for subtitling things, but also, as I've been teasing, this stuff going on in the background. I'll talk about it more when it's more manifest in our hands. Brad.
Yeah, I'm everywhere at Be Invoked. That's BEINVOKED. YouTube, Blue Sky. I guess Twitter if you want to see the carcass of my old account. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah. Do you want to do Abyss later this week, by the way?
A what?
Abyss later this week.
Oh, yeah. No, this would actually be a really good week for me to do Abyss.
Okay, we'll hammer that out after the call then.
Yeah, because work is not going to be too busy. So
I've been like I don't know, it's weird for me because like it's exam / writing season, but there's also means because I have no classes, I can fit in more time, probably, theoretically. But yeah. For now, I guess it's us. So see you next week first for Golden Kamuy, and the week after that for more Ultraman. 3 more episodes, because we're not doing batches of 4 this season.
see you, everyone.
Later.